Welcome back to my channel, sports fans. Okay, let's get into this one right here. I'm sick and tired of hearing about what LeBron did in the '07 playoffs, right? How he drug a bunch of nobodies to the NBA Finals with no All-Star teammate, no Hall of Fame teammate, no no All NBA teammate. And to me, we're going to take it to another level right here, right? We're going to say that what the Jazz did in '97, '98 was more impressive in their finals. Those two finals runs were more impressive than any LeBron James finals runs. More impressive. The quality of opponents they had to beat was more impressive. Even though they lost to the Bulls in the finals, we don't care because we're just giving them credit for getting there because that's LeBron James, right? He doesn't have to win. He gets credit for just going there. He's the only superstar that won in the NBA Finals when he lost. it was a no lose situation for him, right? So we all know the NBA Finals he went to. We don't need to relive them, but we will say the '07 Finals. I mean the '07 Finals run because he had no help, drug a bunch of nobodies, and like I said, he had no All-Star teammate, no All NBA teammate, no Hall of Fame teammate. So does that make him great for what he did, or does it expose the era as weak, right? If I ain't mistaken, he beat two teams that was 500, the Nets and the Wizards. And then he beat a Pistons team that only won two more games than him without Ben Wallace or Larry Brown. A bench player, Chris Webber. Now they want to throw Chauncey Billups in the Hall of Fame. They got a lot of explaining to do. Sean Kemp should be in the Hall of Fame. A lot of guys. Kevin Johnson. So let's get into this finals run in '97. Who Utah beat. So in '97, that's right. The second round, they beat the Lakers 4-1. Let's look at that Lakers team. They won 56 games. And let's check out their roster real quick. You got Corey Blunt, who won champion. I think he won a couple with Jordan, right? On the Bulls. Kobe Bryant, Eldon Campbell, good player. Derek Fisher, Robert Ory, Eddie Jones, Jerome Kersey. Wow. Look at that veteran presence. Travis Knight, George McLeod, Shaq, Sean Rooks, Byron Scott, and Nick Van Exel. Wow, you're telling me a plumber crew beat these guys? These non-athletic white guys with Greg Ostertag, Jeff Hornacek, Stockton, Craig Foster beat this team. Wow. And they beat 4-1. They go on. They go on to play Houston. And let's look at that Houston team real quick, if I may. 57 wins, right? Let's check out the roster. We know some of the roster, right? Charles Barkley, Matt Bullard, Emmanuel Davis, Clyde Drexler, Mario Ellie, great player. Eddie Jones, no, Eddie Johnson, I'm sorry. Charles Jones, Randy Livingston, Sam Mack, Matt Malone, Keem Olajuwon, Brent Pierce, and Kevin Willis. And you had three guys that was all-stars on that team. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know about the Lakers. I think they had two all-stars on that team, right? And then they went on to play the Bulls. So let's look at '98. Let me go back real quick. '98 playoffs. The Jazz were the number one seed. They played Houston in the first round, and Houston was 41-41. Not a great team, but they did have Charles Barkley and the same guys from last year. And they beat them 3-2, right? It was still the best of all. So even them being an AC took them to the limits, right? Took them to the limits. Second round, they beat San Antonio 4-1. So that Houston team, they only got that seed, the 8 seed, because they was banged up all year. But when the playoffs come, they was ready. They barely lost. Is it that the game where? Let me see. I think that's the game where John Stockton hit that 3-pointer to win the game, right? So they played the number 5 seed San Antonio, and they beat the number 4 seed San Antonio did to advance. So let's look at San Antonio's roster, see what they did. 56 wins. Wow. That's a 4 seed. Holy moly. That's crazy. So Vinny Del Negro, go read about him. He was good. Go watch some videos. He was like a Ginobili back in the day. Tim Duncan, Sean Elliott. If you don't know about Sean Elliott, boy, you better know about him real quick. Jaren Jackson, great player. Avery Johnson, great player. Will Perdue, championship player. Chuck Person, wow. David Robinson, Malik Rose, and Monte Williams. A stacked roster with 2 All-Stars. And they beat them 4-1. The next round, they will beat the Lakers. This is when the Lakers, we know this, have 4 All-Stars. Nick Van Exel, Eddie Jones, who is it? Shaq, and Kobe Bryant. Let's look at them. They were a number 3 seed. See what a number 3 seed. Ooh, 61 wins. Wow. Well, I'm trying to tell you, I don't think LeBron could make it back then. You guys, I don't think he could make it back then. So on that team, I think you pretty much had the same players: Corey Blunt, Kobe Bryant, Eldon Campbell, Derek Fisher, Rick Fox, Robert Ory, Eddie Jones, Shaquille O'Neal, Sean Rooks, Nick Van Exel. Swept them. Swept them. Swept them. See ya later. In the next year, in 99, guess what? Was it the same? Well, this Lakers team will get swept again. Not by Utah, but by San Antonio. Wow. They will get swept off the floor again. So the 97 and 98 run that the Jazz had was a greater run than any run that LeBron James ever had. The competitors that they had to play was just off the chain. Off the chain. It doesn't compare. And they didn't do this with a super team. They didn't go get a super team like LeBron did in Miami. And then when he ran back and did it again in Cleveland, they didn't have no super team. Malone and his plumbing crew, they played off of fundamentals. And let me see. Yes, they had the number 1 seed in 97 too. So 97, they won 64 games, insane in that conference. And the next year, they will win 62 games. Insane. And if you don't believe the competition that they was playing was great, after those 2 years when they went to the finals and played the Bulls, guess what? In 98, San Antonio won the championship. The next year, the Lakers won 3 in a row. So if you think with those same teams, the Spurs had pretty much had the same team when they got beat by the Jazz. And the Lakers, they didn't exactly have the same team. I think they got rid of Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones. But they had Derek Fisher, they had Robert Ory, they had Rick Fox, they had these guys. I think they had too much talent on their team. That's what's so crazy. They got rid of Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones because they had too much talent on their team. And guess what? Utah still whooped on them. So I don't care what LeBron did in 2007. I don't care what he did in Miami when he did those finals runs, eight straight. When he was in Miami and Cleveland, they were not impressive. This guy has super teams and only won the conference two times. One time in Miami and one time in Cleveland. Which means he didn't have he only had the number one seed one time in Cleveland, one time in Miami. And we all know why. Because this guy plays around, he doesn't practice. They don't have to play because the East is so weak. They could just get a number four seed and still go to the finals. And I think one year didn't they have the number four seed or something like that? Let me check this out real quick. It was nuts. 2011 playoffs. So we'll just go from here. 2011, Chicago had the number one seed, and Miami had the number two seed. 2012. Is that right? Is it 2000? Wow. 2012, Miami had the number two seed again. Let me just make sure that's right. Yeah, that's right. So let's go to 2013. I think that's the season when Miami had the number one seed. Yep. They finally got the number one seed. 2014. Miami, the number two seed again. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. Once the Bulls got past Detroit, they had the number one seed in all those finals runs, except for one season. In the seasons they had the number one seed five times, they won 60 plus games. So, what is this? 2015, we'll go to Cleveland. They had the number two seed. 16, they had the number one seed. 2017, they had the number two seed. 2018, and this is they had the number four seed. Wow. So Boston had the number two seed. Remember that same Boston super team? No. My fault. That was Tatum and Jalen Brown and all them. Wow. They had the number four seed and still went to the finals without Kyrie. Oh boy, that's the season where they say he drug a bunch of nobodies to the finals again, exposing how weak that East really was. How weak that East really was. Because let me tell you something. In the 80s and 90s, if you had the number one seed, 99% of the time you was going to the finals. I'm not going to say you was going to win it, but you was going to go to the finals out the East. That's just how it was. You can see all those years LeBron had the number two seed and he still went to the finals, exposing the East. And then that last year in 2018, where he supposedly drug a bunch of bombs to the finals, and that team was in disarray in the middle of the season, and he still made it to the finals, where he got swept. That just tells you how weak, the weakest East of all time. Weak. So when you look at the 97, 98 Jazz team, it was about fundamentals and it was about defense that they put on these guys. Remember, all these guys, Karl Malone, John Stockton, and Jeff Hornacek are either older than these guys that they faced or the same age. The only young people on here was what Kobe and Tim Duncan, I think. And Shaq was like in the middle, right? So there's really no excuse. There's really no excuse. And then you look down here at the bottom. LeBron needed three top 75 players and three future Hall of Fame players to make it to the finals. Karl Malone only needed these two plumbers to go back to back finals. and play Chicago, maybe the greatest dynasty of all time. Maybe behind the Celtics of the 60s, right? Two, three-peats, we would say at least the second greatest dynasty of all time. And when we look at as far as 60-win seasons, we can we can say, bam, they're the greatest dynasty of all time. And as far as beating 60-win opponents in the playoffs and the finals, it's not even close. 60-win teams that they had to beat the Bulls. So it was highly competitive in the 90s, offensively and defensively, especially defensively. Right? You the games were so low scoring because nobody was getting nothing easily. That's what it meant. You had to earn all your points. Even Michael Jordan, all these fadeaways, long mid ranges, and stuff like that. Dudes draped all over them. You had to earn your points. Great big man. Michael Jordan retired the first time. Who won? Big man. When he retired the second time, who won? Big man. I mean, what are we talking about? So this is what LeBron needed to go face his opponents, except for '07, where he got lucky and basically played nobody. And this is what Karl Malone and his two plumbers needed to go to the finals. So way more impressive what the Jazz did than any run that LeBron ever had. Because their path to the finals was never easy. And then the opponents that they had to play was the Bulls. And let me tell you something. If you think the Bulls just hammered these guys, you might want to go back and watch some of these finals. You'll say you don't even know how the Bulls won. How they won. It was just when it was tied 2-2 and it was game 5, the Bulls found a way to win that game 5 and go back home or wherever they went, back to Utah, and close it out because of Michael Jordan. Not because of Scottie Pippen, not because of all these other players. I'm not going to say they didn't do their thing, but the difference was Michael Jordan, because he always wanted to do things that other great players didn't do, right? Once he got his time. Never lose 3 in a row from 91 to 98 while he played. Do 2 three-peats. Never go to game 7. Highest scoring average in the finals. Just all kind of incredible records, right? That Michael Jordan has in the 90s. That he wanted to do these things that Kareem didn't do, Magic didn't do, Wilt Chamberlain didn't do, Russell didn't do. All these other guys coming after him. These guys were living up to a bar. They had a bar set on their heads of the past players from the 70s, from the 60s, from the 80s. So whenever it was your era, you was trying to pass that bar. We don't know what happened in the LeBron James era and why these guys never try to pass the bar. We think because they took defense out of the game. So, I don't know. Tell me what you think.